Raw and Unscripted. Kelly Ann and myself, Kim Basler, we are so happy that you're here. This is our 18th episode. And today, we hope you'll join in on this conversation. We're going to be talking all about the importance and maybe something that you are working on learning how to do, and that is pressing the pause button. Now, we're not talking about pressing the pause button in this video. we want you here with us. We're talking about pressing the pause button in us, being able to stop, being able to slow down, being able to take a little bit of an inventory on your life. And I'm excited, Kellyanne. Thank you for being here again with me, Kellyanne. Another week has gone by and we're back together again.
I know. Here we are again. And just time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Episode 18. It's crazy. I think today is a topic that might challenge a lot of us because we are not really good at allowing ourselves permission to step back, to pause, to take a break. And I think over the last couple years, COVID forced us to do that. And when you talk to a lot of people, when we were deep into that stay at home, all of those things, there were so many people struggling with that because it was forced on us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for some of us, like me, it was very refreshing. I really enjoyed that time at home. But I know for so many people, the busyness that they had been so accustomed to, the distractions in their lives that had just become a part of the way that they lived, all of a sudden those things were taken away.
Mm-hmm.
And you were forced into a pause. And that created many, many struggles for people. So we're coming out of that forced pause. And today we're really talking about, obviously, we don't ever want to go into that kind of an extreme pause,
Mm-hmm.
but we're talking about how we can not allow that busyness to control us, to overwhelm us, to be able to take a reset, and which is exactly what we need every day, probably multiple times a day.
Yeah. It's not an easy thing for us to do because many of us were brought up with conditioning around us, our homes, society, where we were told that to be successful, you needed to accomplish, you needed to have a bank account, you needed to have the car, you needed to have the house. And so we start collecting things, and therefore we need more money, and therefore we have to work more. But also, like I see it in the gyms too, is like gyms are a beautiful place for people to be with themselves and to take care of themselves. But like I think a lot of people are using the gym as a source of distraction. I know I did. So I could say that if I did, I know somebody else is too. But I've had people share this with me as well. But we have a hard time. We have a hard time being with ourselves, whether that be just learning how to sit still and to not be a human doer, but be a human being, to be in our bodies, to feel them, to know that we don't always have to be chasing another stimulus, more dopamine. Like even to sit still and quiet is difficult for people, and we weren't taught how, and we're also avoiding some of the things that we have done really good at pushing down for many years. But I will say this: I know you and I have both experienced the importance of this. Is that when we slow ourselves down, we're able to gain perspective. And that's really what this conversation today is going to be about. And thank you for everyone who's tuning in. It's going to permission to pause is going to be what is meant for you today, whether it be checking in with your life to see how things are going for you, if you're happy with where things are, what needs to change. But it's also just this knowing of we don't have to deserve a pause. We don't have to earn a pause, but we absolutely need a pause. That's for sure, I think.
For sure. And I think we have so much noise. There
Mhm,
is so much noise in the world. There is a lot of external noise.
mhm,
There's everywhere you go, there's noise. I was sitting in a coffee shop talking to a friend of mine, and the noise of the music, it was driving me crazy. There
Mm.
isn't a place you can go unless you're out in nature where it is quiet. And we are able to I think we're able to block out that external noise maybe when we get into our homes, when we go walk in nature, when we put on our headphones and listen to a meditation or something relaxing, when we get into the bath. And those are ways to quiet that external noise. But then we have an internal noise, and that internal noise is all the self talk. It's all the self doubt. It's all the things that are quite hard to turn off. And I think taking a pause from that internal noise, that internal conversation, is probably that is the thing. I think that if we could do more of that, that would really allow us to regroup and realign. And I mean, I think those things can be as simple. Like when we say taking a pause, there are taking great pauses where you're taking a whole weekend, where you're taking a whole day, but there are very simple pauses throughout the day. And sometimes it's just taking a few deep breaths,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes it's just, a morning meditation, a gratitude, what you do every morning, Kim, that stillness, because we aren't good at being alone with ourselves. As you said, I find even myself, I'm sitting, I'm sitting in the car. I was going through the car wash yesterday, and I found myself taking my phone out.
Yeah.
I instead of just taking those 4 minutes or whatever it was to just sit with myself, I take out the distraction.
Mhm.
And um, I think this permission to pause is just giving ourselves that permission to tune in with ourselves again and realign.
Yeah. We don't know what we're missing when we don't have this as a part of our life. Like we think, I guess this is, and for everyone who's in here talking and adding so many great comments, thank you for that. Thanks for being a part of this conversation this morning. Um, we don't know what we're missing. Like life can feel quote unquote okay, good, fine, but I know that in the last few years, as I've really learned how to know what I need and knowing that being with myself, being in quiet, not necessarily in stillness, but also like stillness is important. And I do that when I'm reading or sitting in my bed doing a meditation or a hypnosis or something like that. But it also being in like getting away from the noise of the world, as you mentioned, right? Like to me, when I can walk into the woods, there's just this immediate calming feeling that I have. When you're hearing that crunch of snow underneath your feet, you're hearing the creaking of the trees as they're blowing in the wind. There is a noise, but it's a very restful, calm noise. And when we start to realize, like I always will say this, like what feels good when something feels good, and you're just like you feel your whole body just like sigh. It's like a whole body sigh, and you feel lightness, you feel softness come over you. It is a reminder for you that your body wants more of this. As we've said before in so many episodes, our bodies are always whispering and speaking to us, trying to guide us, trying to help us feel more aligned in our world and more at peace in our world. But we have to be able to take those moments. And that's not an easy thing to do, because even when you're intentionally trying to, let's say you go for a massage and you're like, I'm going to take this time for myself. And then you're lying on the table and potentially you have a massage therapist who doesn't stop speaking. And so then you have to
Get a
either,
new one.
yes, um, or like you have to be able to then find your inner voice to be like, I'd like to just have some quiet today. I did that last week. I went to have a pedicure and I said to the woman, well, I was doing pedicure and reflexology. But I said to her, I'm going to listen to my book today while we're here. We talked for a few minutes, but I literally said what I needed. And she was absolutely okay with it. So it's not easy for us to be able to know what we need, but then also then advocate for what we need,
Mhm.
right? Because we can be in our homes and we can say to ourselves, you know what? I know that the dishes can wait till tomorrow, or I know that it's okay for somebody else to do a job in the house. So I'm going to go and take my time. But then we're challenged with all the beliefs of like, well, they're not going to do it the way I need it to be done. And I'm just going to have to do it again. So I might as well do it myself. This is all what we get wrapped up in. But I don't know, like from a nervous system standpoint, for me being able to feel more like healthy again, like those of you that know me know my story, but I was chronically covered in hives for a year and a half of my life because of the cortisol and the stress and the overwhelm that was inside my body. And so I used my hives as they would slowly leave and then come back. I use those as a barometer of checking in with myself. Am I giving myself enough time to pause, to be still, to press that brake pedal down and know that I can just take a moment or a day, whatever I need.
Mhm. And I think that um, we have to disconnect from the world and the busyness to really focus on our inner voice and our inner wisdom. Because I know myself, talking personally, I don't listen very well to my inner voice at times. I don't listen to my intuition. I don't listen to those little nudges that my body and my mind are giving me that are saying it's time to take a break. And when we disconnect from the outside, it allows us to go inside and to listen to that inner wisdom. And I believe, and I love retreats. I love taking that time, that step out of your life. And maybe you can't do a retreat, and that's okay. But maybe it's just, Kim, as you said, like a walk in the woods. Or, last week I was in South Carolina, and walking on the beach was so powerful and emotional. I've never had that kind of emotion, but it was truly a pause for me. And it was really a time of deep reflection, because when you take that pause from the world, when you stop kind of focusing on, like, in your life, you're able to look from a different perspective and instead focus on your life and
Mhm,
work on your life and work on, that busyness doesn't allow us to look at the big picture,
mhm,
because we're so busy with the tasks that we have to do every day that rarely do we step back. And I think it's in those stepping back times where we really can assess, we can look at our lives and do an audit and assess and say, is this making me happy? Is this, what I'm feeling called to do? Is this feeling uncomfortable? And I see so many, and hey, I was one of those people who didn't want to step back, didn't want the busyness, the distraction of the busyness kept me from having to look at my life and
mhm,
having to look at the things that I wasn't happy with and the things that I didn't want. Um, but learning to tune inward and really listening, we all have that inner wisdom. Sometimes we just don't know how to access it.
mhm,
And getting quiet with ourselves is the way we activate it, is the way that we connect to it.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. I always say to people, you can't know what's not working or know what is working unless you take a little inventory
Mhm.
and bring awareness. And again, like if I, it's so much easier. Like when I think of the many times that I experience burnout, and I mean, I always the signs for me where I'm pushing myself too hard, where I'm feeling overwhelmed, where I need to take more pause and I need to reassess, is that I get very emotional. I cry more. I'm not sleeping well. I'm very sensitive, and so then my crying is always, mind you, I've been crying a lot lately, Kellyanne. So I'm like, oh, what's that telling me? But like we have to, and it's the hardest thing to do because nobody wants, especially, gosh, especially if we're going through a really difficult experience and we're almost afraid of what we know we need,
Mhm.
because what we know we need, we don't know how to give that to ourselves, or that's going to require a whole nother level of unraveling, like we talked about last week.
Mhm.
So instead of feeling those feelings and allowing yourself to sit with them, we bury them. Like, we're so good at burying them. It's way easier for me to turn on Netflix. It's way easier for me to go and push myself through another workout, bury myself and stay late at work, take on another job. So much easier. Or even take care of other people. How often do we do that? It's like, oh, I'm not going to take care of myself because of all the reasons why we don't want to do that often. So I'm going to now take care of other people, which gives my ego a little boost. I feel good. But then, we see that with chronic people pleasers and people who are fixing other people, and then we get even more worn out and disconnected from ourselves. So there's no other way through it, unfortunately. But fortunately, everyone, that we do. And I want to just remind us all, when we say pause, because Kellyanne spoke so beautifully about this, when we say pause, we're not saying that a pause only can happen while sitting still. Pause
Mhm.
does not require stillness in the body. Pause is stepping away from people. A lot of times it's people.
Mhm.
Taking it, quieting down the noise. No radios in the car, no televisions on, just allowing things to be peaceful. And then all of a sudden, it's just like this breath of fresh air. At least it is for me, anyways.
Mhm. Definitely. And I think and we've talked about this before, that
Mhm,
busyness is celebrated in our world.
mhm.
On one of your posts that you did, you talked about that masculine energy, that masculine energy of busy and doing and hustle and grinding, that is really celebrated. And when you I find it really interesting when I meet people or talk to people or run into people, when you're out and you say, "Oh, how are you doing?" "Oh, I'm just so busy." And I think, why, like, I really have tried to stop myself from saying that, because I found myself saying it too.
Mhm.
But that's not something that should be celebrated. That When you are feeling like you are too busy, there's something not aligned there.
Yeah.
There are busy times in your life. And hey, when I was a young mom, my gosh, my life was busy, right? With 3 kids, and you have those busy times in your life. But I don't believe that anybody has too busy a life to be able to take the pauses, to be able to tune back in, to realign, to reconnect to themselves. Because as we were saying, it doesn't have to take a whole day. It doesn't have to take a weekend retreat. Those are amazing. They are amazing things to be able to do, but you don't need to do that. And it all comes down to our priorities, right?
Well, that's what I was just about to say.
Mhm.
I'm going to finish my train of thought in 1 second, but I've got that beautiful little message up on my screen. So if I disappear from our call, no, you won't see it. I see it.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
It's back. So if I disconnect, you keep the call coming and I'm going to try and join back in.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah, it is. It's all about priorities. It's always about, I really it would bother me when people would say, oh, we all have the 24 hours in the day. We all have 7 days in the week. But it is true. And I mean, I think, if we can talk about that person who has, young children, who truly is that busy, there are people that are definitely busier than other
Mhm.
people. But it's like, how can I learn how to create those pauses while still having children under the age of 5 at home? Like, how can I do that? That's where we have to allow ourselves to be creative. And maybe that pause looks like that we're all going to sit down and we're all going to read a little story together. And maybe you do that enough times with the kids that they start to understand, oh, this is story time. This is special time with mommy or daddy. And then mommy or daddy gets to at least press pause in some way or another, right? The pause doesn't always have to be by ourselves, but it's the running, it's the running, it's the going, it's the sports. Oh, do you remember the sports?
Yep. And I think there is a sense, especially I think as women, we can feel guilt when we
Mhm,
take the pause
mhm.
because we feel it's our responsibility to
Yeah,
do all the things and it's our responsibility to be busy. If we're not busy, then there's something we're forgetting about. There's something that we're letting go. There's something that we're not doing. And I just actually just talked to my daughter about this. She's a young mom and she's got that mom guilt. And I said to her, like, you can only, you know, ask yourself the question, am I doing the best that I can in this moment? Because every moment is different. Your
mhm.
best will always be different. And in some moments, your best is, you know, I have to, for at least when you're looking at your kids, okay, I can't deal with this. I'm going to put my child on the computer right now, the laptop. Sometimes your best is I can sit down and play with my child for an hour. And it's just like, as women in their midlife, it's the same thing. Our best is different every day. And I think and everybody's at a different phase, but I know for me, that busyness that came with having children at home, even when they were in university, that busyness of having to, not, I shouldn't say having, but going to visit them, going to, all of those things, I don't have that anymore. So there is definitely more free time. And it takes a while for you to accept that, okay, this extra time I have, I don't have to fill it
Yeah.
with doing things. I can fill it with doing things for myself,
Mhm.
taking that pause, and it's a shift in our mindset for sure.
Yeah, and it's often an uncomfortable one
Yeah.
that, it takes showing up. That's why I will say that it's about knowing yourself, and when
Mhm.
you know yourself and again, I will remind everyone who's listening and catching us as a replay, when you take care of yourself, you are able to take care of other people in a much more loving, supportive way. You show up as a better person in this world when you are taking care of yourself. So if you can remember that and let that be the backbone and the foundation to the reasons why you say, honey, I really need to go out and have a walk. Can you please put the kids in the bathtub tonight? I need to go and do some yoga. I want to go meet a friend for coffee. Like when you can know that and you have, if you are in a relationship with someone, but that could also just be with friends to be able to say to your friend, you know what, I need to change our plans today because I've just been really going a lot and I really could use a day at home. And so I appreciate you understanding. But we have to be able to know what we need. And the more you do it, it's just like I bring so many analogies back to muscles and the gyms, but it is a muscle. You strengthen it, you learn how to use it. And then when it gets stronger and you're reaping the benefits of it, you're able to then use it again without feeling the guilt as much. And some things will bring up more guilt than others, right? Like I can think of times where I was needed at home, but I was needing to go away to something. And you have to you have to balance that energy. But we always can make it up to the people around us again. But if you keep burning the candle at both ends with your own self, if you keep letting your cup empty because you're not allowing yourself to take that pause to check in, you won't know. And as we get into this world, well, not get into this world, but within this world, when we're older, the pressures don't they this the pressures keep coming in some way or another. They just keep coming, and it's our job to keep advocating for ourselves, remind the people that our daughters, our younger sisters, our friends, let them know too, so that we're all doing it for each other. This is what our world needs. We've got way too much push, hustle, grind. More is better. Be successful. Be disciplined. Work harder. If you pause, somebody else is going to get ahead of you. So
Mhm.
don't pause. Right?
Mhm.
Like it's everywhere.
You're right, but pause it's actually a universal principle,
Hmm.
and what the principle is that as your activity lessens, the order in your life increases. So it's actually pause is actually a catalyst for your growth and for your transformation. And there's a mentor that I have, and he says that growth happens in the gaps.
Hmm.
Growth doesn't happen when you're busy, 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 right? It's almost like exercise, Kim, right? You need that rest
Yep.
time. You
Hmm.
can't exercise 5 days a week. You need that rest time to integrate the work that you've done. And I think it's the same with pause. If you are looking to grow in your life, you can't just keep doing and doing and doing. You need that pause time to really integrate and transform and to grow. And that's, when you lean into that idea, I think it then allows you even more permission to um, pause.
Hmm.
When you see it as this is actually a universal principle that is going to allow me to move my life forward.
Yeah. I said in my post when I described today's episode, I said we can either choose to try and keep up with the Joneses when the Joneses are always trying to keep up with the other Joneses, right? We can we can either choose to continue that
Mhm.
lifestyle or we can choose to do it a little bit more our way and be the one that isn't following the herds, but is willing to stay off in the pasture
Mhm.
to
And that
lay
And
down.
that's right, and that takes courage, right? It takes
As
courage to go against the grain. It takes courage when the world is telling us, be busy, do more." It takes courage to say, "No, that's not for me."
Mhm,
And sometimes I think that I know for me, I tried to do all the things early in my life because that's what was celebrated, that's what everybody else was doing. And I realized how much I had burnt myself out because that was not my natural way of being.
mhm.
I am an introvert. So every time I tried to do all the things with all the people, doing all the peopling, that was wearing me out. And I didn't understand that. I thought that's how I was supposed to be. And I think we get caught up in that. Well, if everybody else is doing it, that's the way it's supposed to be. And do what's right for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't get kicked out.
Good job. I'm glad.
Not that I had anything to do with it. I will thank the gods of my computer. Listen, everyone, thank you for tuning in so very much for being here. We really, really appreciate it and lots of great conversation. So Kellyanne and I will always come in here and take a peek at what you've been saying. We like to bring you into the conversation as much as possible, but I also love the chat because then you're connecting with each other and every single one of us, including you that's listening right now, we all have so much value to offer other people through our own lived experiences. And so that's why we share. This is what we do for one another, is to be there, to listen, to learn, stay open-minded, and know that just because um, we have a path that we think is the best path, the way to do things, doesn't mean that that's the right path for somebody else. And be brave, be courageous to create a new path for yourself, one that has space for you to pause and to make sure that you are aligned with what you need in your life today. On that note, Kellyanne, any last words of wisdom?
No, I'm going to take some time to pause today for sure.
Yeah,
This has
yeah.
just inspired me. I must say I'm pretty good at it, but I'm going to take some time today. And as always, Kim and I, we both are coaches. I am a mindset and manifestation coach. And please follow along on social media with me. I love to interact with people. And, if you're interested in working with me, please reach out. I'd love to chat. Kim?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so grateful to have you, Kellyanne, in my life. We met through a working space with other coaches, and I really love doing this with you. So thank you again. So my name's Kim Basler. Obviously, again, I'm a food freedom and mindset coach, supporting women with their relationships with food, healing their relationships with food, as well as with body image, and building up confidence.
Oh, I guess she got knocked out. So I am going to end, ladies, and say thank you. If you have not connected with Kim and you feel called to do that, please reach out to Kim. She provides so much value to on social media and to her clients. So please do that. And thank you so much for being here with us. And we will see you next week, same time, same place. Have a great day.